Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Culture Binge, the Wisecrack podcast where we explore the happenings of the current cultural zeitgeist. I'm Michael, here as always with Wisecrack's Commander-in-Chief, Alec. Alec, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. And the Poet Laureate of the Wisecrack intellectual community, Serby. Serby, what's happening with you?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
Oh, doing just peachy. Very excited to be back. I think we've had quite an extended vacation since our last episode, so I'm glad everyone's doing well. Any big events, happenings, life changes for anyone that every listener should know about?
Still COVID-free.
Still COVID-free. Great. Alec, are you still COVID-free?
COVID-free. A lot of nightmares about having asymptomatic COVID and going to like large gatherings without a mask on, but that's about it.
Great. Yes. According to my unconscious mind, I am riddled with COVID all day, but medically, I think I am also COVID-free. So good to know all around. So a lot to get into today. But one big announcement is in 2021, we've decided to bring a certain dose of negativity back to the podcast. So we will be reintroducing Chaps if one of the hosts wants to use that. We're not going to say it's obligated. If someone wants to stay all the way positive, they can. But the full Slaps and Chaps protocol is back in play, okay? So I just giving listeners a warning, giving you all a warning. That said, let's get started with that. Serby, Slaps and Chaps. Let's start with Slaps.
So Slaps, Bridgerton on Netflix slaps. It's kind of cheesy, but I love it. It's like Gossip Girl meets Pride and Prejudice. I really enjoyed it. The only thing I didn't enjoy were the sex scenes. Very uncomfortable.
I was about to ask you. I saw someone who maybe posted video clips on Twitter, and I thought it looked like pretty pornographic.
A little pornographic, but also, and I watch like a ton of stuff, and I'm super sex positive, and those things don't.
I watch a ton of porn.
I'm watching sex 23 hours a day.
I'm watching
this
it
is
right
too
now.
much.
Yeah, it's off to the side. But I've watched Game of Thrones. Like nothing ever really makes me uncomfortable, but for some reason, these sex scenes, like I had to forward through them. And I don't know if it's because the girl looks really young or it was just like an extended scene. Like it just went on and on and on. And I didn't feel like it fit with the show. Like it felt like a totally different vibe than the rest of the show. So the context switching was really uncomfortable, but I did not like the sex scenes. But the rest of it is really great.
Was the dislike of the sex scenes a chap internal to a slap, or is there a separate chap you have to add to that?
There is a second chap.
Okay, great.
But yes, that was an embedded chap. A many things chap right now. It's difficult to narrow it down, but this week I'm going to go with the newest season of Great British Bake Off.
Oh, it's not good?
Don't like the new host. They
the guy?
changed the guy. Yeah, he sexualizes baking.
Wait, is it Noel Fielding?
No. There's another guy, Matt Lucas, I think. Sandy's not on this one.
Wait, so is the theme that you don't like British sexualizations? Because Bridgerton, you didn't like the British people having sex, and British Bake Off, you don't like that the British people sexualize the baking. I think that you just don't want any sexual activity on the British island.
Yeah. I mean, if
fair.
everybody in the UK could refrain from sexual activity, that would be amazing.
You heard it here, folks. Stop reproducing, Britain.
But really, it was just like he makes these gross comments. Like one of the bakers didn't have their bread wasn't rising enough in the oven. And so he goes, "Oh, well, why don't you just stroke it and maybe it'll get bigger?"
Yuck.
Yeah, it's like stuff like that. And it just doesn't fit with the vibe of Bake Off, which was supposed to be like charming and delightful and like just kind. And he just goes by and he seems to make the contestants and the hosts uncomfortable as well. It's just very disturbing and I don't like it as much. I feel like the old vibe and the old like feeling of Bake Off is gone now.
He kind of reminds me of when I was like in third grade. I thought it was funny to be annoying. And like, I think he just, that's my impression, is that he's just like, it's still funny to be annoying.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. I mean, my takeaway still is like that the British just shouldn't be able to sexualize anything. Give us what we want, which is neutered, non-sexual culture, you guys. But good. I'm glad that was a great Chaps to reinaugurate the tradition. Alec, how about you? Let's start with slaps, and then if you have one, a chap.
Yeah, slaps. It's early on, but I'm gonna give a preliminary slaps. I'm reading this book. It's a cyberpunk novel called Snow Crash. It was recommended by one of our other writers, whose name is Michael. The premise is that there's a pizza delivery guy in the future, in a cyberpunk future, where if you don't get your pizza in 30 minutes, you can kill the driver and like repossess the car, and also the pizza's free. Also, it's run by the mafia. And so it's fucking nuts. I'm only like, 2 chapters in, but so far so good. As far as chaps, this might be controversial, and I might take back my opinion depending on how it plays out. I don't like WandaVision. I don't know what I'm supposed to like about it. It seems like the thing to like about it is a thing might happen 5 episodes from now, which I'm going to keep watching it and I might change it. But so far, I do not care.
What is WandaVision?
It's a Marvel show with the Scarlet Witch, who's played by Elizabeth Olsen, and this guy named Vision, who's also a superhero, but he's like a android kind of situation. And they exist within like the TV tropes in the first episode of, like, I would say like the honeymooners. Like it's a black and white honeymooners episode, and the next episode is maybe a little bit later. Like it seems like it's maybe in the 60s, still black and white, and then it's like in color. And so they're just like embodying these tropes and sort of replaying these, but you don't know what these superheroes are doing in this situation, which is the intrigue. But yeah.
Yeah, as someone who liked it, I don't disagree with that take, though. And I think it is a lot of the show is banking on, are you reading into some of the Easter eggs, assuming that certain things might happen based on super subtle clues, like words in French on a wine bottle in the background that hint to a line from like a comic run from the mid 2000s. So
is that true? Is that a hint I missed? What is it?
I forget the exact name. There's a bottle of wine in the first episode that refers to the House of M from So there's a lot going on there in the background, but I'm curious to see what happens. I think I'm being too faithful maybe, but I'll be curious to revisit that chap and see how it holds.
Yeah. What about you?
Okay, so what slaps is, and I discovered this a couple weeks ago, so I guess this isn't super new, but do you guys know about the YouTube channel and Instagram account Cartnarks?
No.
Okay, wow. Where to begin? It's my new favorite thing in the world. Also, as we record, apparently there was just an earthquake.
Your bookshelf still looks okay. So
everything looks okay. Cartnarks is a series of videos where a man stakes out parking lots and waits for people to not return shopping carts.
Oh, yeah.
And then questions them, encourages them to do it, questions their morality and ethics on the basis of them not doing this simple activity that shows their moral goodness. The fundamental philosophy of Cartnarks seems to be that you can evaluate one's moral fortitude by what they're willing to do when no one is watching, and that the simple act of returning a shopping cart says a lot. Some of the videos are very funny. There's one that was a recent one where a fireman doesn't return his cart, and the guy keeps asking him to, and then the fireman threatens to physically kill him. I really like it. I'm someone that loves rules and sort of like practical morality, so it really hits a lot of sweet spots for me, and I can't believe I just found out about this thing.
I was just having a conversation about as a society, we need more petty punishment. And I was doing this. We were volunteering at the park to clean up trash, and there's just people who hang out there and drink, and that part's fine. But there's just like 1,000 bottle caps there, and like I don't want them to get a fine. I certainly don't want them to get arrested or anything like that. But I was like, I wish there was just like a petty punishment. Like next time they do this, there's someone's job is to find people littering in the park, and just like, I'm going to follow you around for the next 4 hours and play Creed. And that's your punishment. And it's done. And please don't do this again. But I think we need more things like confronting people about shopping carts, following people with annoying music, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I've recently, the past couple times I've been at the beach, I've noticed trash or people leaving trash. And it makes me, I'd say irrationally mad, and makes me think that anyone who would just go to like a beach or a hiking trail and just think it's cool to leave trash is just a real piece of shit. And I can't imagine that these are people that have redeeming qualities in other areas of their life.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
so if you go ahead, Serby.
So one thing I want to say about the cart return, some of my female friends don't return carts sometimes when it's late at night, or they just feel like there's like a guy lingering, so they'll put it near their car, but it's more out of they just feel unsafe rather than I want to be an asshole and like dump my cart.
I will say that all the cart narcs videos I've seen take place in broad daylight. He is not. I've never seen him shame a woman who seems to be in that situation. So just to say, from all I know of cart narcs culture and its inherent theological values, I think I have not seen that yet. So that makes perfect sense. Let's see. I had two chaps I was going between. I'll do this one. My chap is, there was a tweet going around a week ago. I'm not going to say the name of the person. And it was a college professor who was publicly mocking their students for not properly addressing them in emails. And the basic gist here is someone was appalled that when a student wrote them an email, it didn't say, "Hello, Professor Blank," or "Hello, Dr. Blank." I don't know, as someone who was a college professor for almost a decade, that's the biggest crock of shit ever. Who cares if the only reason you got a PhD is so that like 19-year-olds in tons of debt and not sleeping because of all their classes like give you the proper honor in emails? Like, go F yourself. I just hate it so much. And I hate this idea that like academia is meant to be some feudal society where the young bow at the feet of like the holy scholars, the scholars who in most cities, can't afford a mortgage. So stop acting like you're so special. To be clear, that's not their fault. It's society's fault. But yeah, it makes me so mad.
I had a professor in college who did that to me. I greeted them as Professor so-and-so. And she wrote back saying, "I have a PhD. I worked really hard for that. So you need to call me doctor." I was like, I don't give a shit. Like, really? Does it matter?
I hate it.
I know some teachers, female teachers, who might stress like, you need to address me as like either professor or doctor, but it's more of like all their male colleagues always get assumed to be doctors, whereas they're like, well, what are you? Like they're still an adjunct, but like basically not giving them the respect and assuming that they don't have like the credentials, so to speak. But it's never like, you need to give me the proper, letter form email so that you can stroke my ego. It's just like, please acknowledge that I'm also a doctor.
Yeah, well, to full circle this Slaps and Chaps sessions, we did start off by criticizing the British Isles pretty hard for their attempts at sexuality. I'll praise them right now because my last full-time academic job was in the UK. And in UK academic culture, you just call people by their first names. So when I was in a department of philosophy there, I was called Michael. And there, one of my colleagues who was an, distinguished, honored professor, blah, 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 her name was Allison. Yeah. Like, it wasn't this whole thing where you talk like that. And occasionally you would see American academics that assume that. I don't like it. And I think what I noticed, the difference of the vibe of people just using your first name is it was a lot more collegial. Students felt a lot more comfortable talking to you when they could just say, "Hey, Michael," rather than, "Excuse me, Professor Burns." So yeah, I hate that. I think the person who brought that up online is dumb. I think everyone who thinks that's a great way to do things is dumb. And I think you need more meaning and value in your life if the only thing that makes you feel powerful is like that. I don't know. Join like one of those like fight gyms and do MMA if you want to feel powerful, I guess.
What was the response? What did people say to that?
Oh, this person got dunked on so hard. I mean, I saw it too.
Good.
It was just like, everyone's like, this person's a monster.
Yeah, there's like a couple early on people that were like, yeah, but then the internet.
But also,
nay.
you're forgetting there's a theatric component, which was she like walked in the class and like threw the papers everywhere and said, this is what it's like when you send me an email without like a proper citation.
Sorry, these are week-old podcast notes, everyone. I'm really sorry. I left that detail out. Thank God that Alec is here. But yes, that made me even more infuriated that you would do that, especially to people who, for the most part, like most students, are in debt. Most students are working like 20 plus hours a week while taking full-time classes. Most students right now are doing all of these things while living through a goddamn global pandemic. So it's like, maybe pump the brakes a little bit, dog. Yeah. So yeah, that's my thought on that. But if you're a professor that wants to be referred to as doctor or professor, please email us and we'll respond by not calling you either of those things. But we got a lot to talk about today, and lots of positivity. I'm kidding. We're going to talk about a lot of COVID related things. So get ready for it. Tuck in, pour yourself a cocktail if you need to. So we're going to talk about the vaccination rollout today. We're going to talk a little bit about the relationship between urban sprawl and COVID cases in certain cities, and then we're going to talk about, what it means if you are a white person from Massachusetts who decides that you are in fact Spanish and that you don't know what the word for cucumber is, and you have to ask the host of the Today Show what you call that. But maybe that was too much of a hint. It's a real thing that happens, or that happened. So I'll start. Let's talk about the vaccination rollout a bit. I won't get too deep into this because I know it's a bummer for everyone. But the thing that we have been waiting for, the thing that we have hoped and prayed for months and months is finally here. We have vaccines, 2 of them approved so far in America, that are available. They're rolling out. And as we've been told all along by our government, by those that work at a thing called Operation Warp Speed, that we would have millions of vaccines administered by the end of 2020, going into 2021. And none of this has happened. And everything that's happened thus far has been pretty shoddy. So this is, as of a couple weeks ago, the United States was on pace to have the entire population vaccinated in just under 7 years at the pace we are currently operating. And this is starting from a place where we were not promised, but told some level of normalcy might be with us by autumn of this year. So things off to a bad start there. One of the biggest things that's been in the news, and we've been hearing about the vaccine rollout, is unused vaccine doses, which it's horrifying. It's like you show up at a party a little bit late and you hear that someone had a chicken nugget tray, but they decided at 9 p.m. to throw all the nuggets away, and you're really hungry and the nuggets are just in the trash. And you're like, why did you do that? Yeah. I don't know if that's ever happened to me, but it would really upset me if it did. But because of the rules around who can get vaccinated right now, mixed with a little bit of confusion between sort of the federal and state governments and state and local governments, there's been instances where at the end of a given day, there are vaccine doses left. And when you open one of the vaccine containers, there's a ticking clock for how long you have to use that. And in some cases, they get to the end of the day, they've maybe already vaccinated everyone at the facility that's over 75. There's doses left. And I know in California, for example, and in New York, people were worried about punishment if you vaccinated people that weren't in the tier that was being vaccinated right then. So rather than nurses risk paying hefty fines, doses were thrown away. In other cases, and I think I read about this in New York, yes, there were some nurses in New York that literally ran around town trying to find qualified people to give shots to before it went bad. And they went to a fire station and a few other places because they were just well, shit, we have these doses to give out, but they were put in that situation. So rules have recently changed now at the federal level and most states level that have opened it up to 65 plus, which sounded like a good thing. But a lot of the things I have read since then will argue that it's kind of a bad thing, and that by opening it up to everyone 65 plus, it gives access to a lot of privileged people with access to good medical care that might not need it, or people that are already working from home and could be taking doses away from people that need it and work in high-risk situations. There's a story, and one could look this up, about how Stanford Hospital gave most of the first round of their doses to administrative employees that largely worked from home, and gave a very small amount of doses. I think it was 17 out of 1,300 were given to residents. Yeah. And it led to a big stink there. The residents wrote this letter, which you can look up, which was very good, where they pointed out how they witnessed doses being given to people they haven't physically seen in the hospital since March because they've been doing their admin work from home, while people, and people who were younger that were residents in the hospital who were exposed to COVID every single day were not able to get vaccines. And then most recently, I've heard that in New York City, this was according to Alex Mayer, that they are going to be out of their doses as of Thursday, the 21st of January. So probably after this podcast comes out. So one quote I read, this is by Kevin Alt, who's a professor at the University of Kansas Medical Center, and this is from a Politico article. He said, and this is sort of the argument against the opening it up based on age criteria, said if you open it up and just base it on age criteria, a lot of people who already have access to good health care can skip to the front and leave other people behind. So I think that's one of the big risks going on there. The only other thing I'll note from the early stories, and I know the story's now a few weeks old, but did you all hear about the Wisconsin pharmacist who destroyed 500 doses just because?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun one for us because in my partner's extended family, there is a Wisconsin pharmacist. So we all thought, of course, he did it. He did not. Shouts to Steve, the Wisconsin pharmacist. Now, in response to a lot of the I guess the bad parts of the rollout, states have now started creating massive vaccination centers. In California, Dodger Stadium is becoming a vaccination center, so that's exciting. For all the Disney adults out there, Disneyland in Orange County is becoming a vaccine site. So, we might here at Wisecrack occasionally be accused of going a little hard on Disney, but I would say this is an instance where that's a good thing. Happiest place on earth. And then in Alex's neck of the woods, Met Stadium, or is it called something else? It's the stadium where the Mets play in Queens.
Is it the
City Field?
City Field. I know things about sports.
They're going 24/7, which I think is great. Ooh. And I'll say this as an aside, something that annoys me very bad. Why aren't they all 24/7? I mean, once we have the doses for it, I would gladly get up at 3 a.m. to do that, or I would just stay up, let's be honest. The other thing that's also happened in California, and I'm pretty sure New York and a bunch of other places, is along with opening up these testing sites, they've expanded who can be vaccinators. So I know in California, for example, now like a dentist is qualified to give you the vaccine. EMTs,
I heard that about New York as well.
Yeah. I've not yet heard if YouTube and podcast hosts are qualified to give the vaccine, but I've made calls. So I'm hoping I'm going to be able to give out vaccines. Now, I guess one of the last negative things I'll say, and I'll see what you guys think about this. So even though there's been a lot of talk about how we don't have a lot of vaccine, and I think our national reserve is pretty much out and we're waiting for the refill, in a lot of states, the percentages that have been given out are still pretty bad. So the state as of right now that's given out the most of their vaccines are North Dakota. North Dakota has given out, I think, let me see, as of my last check, 72.62% of the vaccines they've been given have been distributed. So they're number one. State of California, sorry I'm talking about it, but it's where I live. It's where 2/3 of us live. California is 45th in the nation. California's been given 3.5 million doses. They've administered 1.4 of those. And yesterday, whenever we're recording this, I don't know when your yesterday will be, but Gavin Newsom of California kind of bragged about how we've given out the most doses without pointing out the fact that have the largest state population and have given out the 45th least amount of them. So things aren't going great. As we record this, the United States is experiencing a transfer of power, a peaceful one, don't worry. But the new commander-in-chief has promised to give out 100 million shots in his first 100 days.
Which I just want to say, like, that's obviously better. I'm not going to shit on it, but like, is that the best we can do? Like, we were supposed to be when the vaccine was getting approved, they're like, listen, we need to vaccinate 1 million people a day, end of 2020, beginning of 2021. And it's like, is this really our reach goal? Like, can't we shoot for 2 million? Because at 1 million people a day, if you need to do 720 million doses, because, each person needs 2 doses, are we just waiting for 2 years? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's not good. Also, I just don't like the ideas of like this like 100 shots in 100 days. Like, why does everything have to sound like it's a used car sales ad in this freaking country?
It's a 100-point plan, 100 days. Yeah. Start from step 100, go.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's some states where like they have just opened things up. So another state we love to talk about is the state of Florida. To be clear, I spent a big chunk of my childhood there, so I'm allowed to say bad things about it. Alec as well spent time in Florida. He's allowed to say bad things about it. And Serby's just allowed to say bad things about it. But in Florida, they basically opened it up as a free-for-all, which has led to massive lines, tons of disorganization.
Is that true?
Free-for-all if you were 65 or up, not everyone.
Gotcha.
But you might imagine, this might shock people, Florida has a lot of people that are 65 or over in it, quite a few people. And a lot of those people as well, Florida has a lot of old, rich, connected people as well. So there's been a lot of line skipping, sketchy activity, confusion about people getting it. So this far, it's been, I would say I would rank the rollout on a scale of like super chill to shit show. Mostly a shit show thus far. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm kind of I don't want to say worried, but I'm not super optimistic moving forward. So, I mean, what have y'all been like feeling, hearing, reading, thinking about the vaccination rollout thus far?
I think it's a mess. Oh, you can go.
No,
ahead.
you go, Serby.
Serby,
So
you
I
go.
think it's a bit of a mess. I don't anticipate being vaccinated until the end of the year, unless something like crazy happens, and I get it sooner. But I mostly just want all of the healthcare workers and the grocery store workers, all of them to get it. My best friend from high school is a doctor, and when she was vaccinated, she sent me a picture of it happening, and I started to cry. It made me so happy, and I realized how stressed out I've been thinking about her going to work, and it felt like such a relief. And so I can't imagine how I'll feel when my mom and my grandparents and my brother and like they all get vaccinated. It'll be so nice.
Yeah, Serby, let's do this as well so we can look back on this episode. Give me as specific as you want. When do you think you will get a vaccine? You can give me a month. You can give me a date.
November 2021.
Whew. Okay, cool. We got November 21. Alex, say whatever you're going to say, but start with that. When do you think, if you had to put money down, you are getting the shot?
Optimistic me wants to say July 2021. Pessimistic me says
Aggressive.
November 2022.
2022.
Oh my God. Anyone who's listening who heard that and just had a slight panic attack, pause, take 10 deep breaths, come back to us.
What about you, Burns?
I would say definitely Q3 2021. I kind of like that. I think maybe like I'll say October. I'll say October 2021. Not because I'm trying to plan a wedding in November, but yeah, I'll say October.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is obviously part of it's the federal government doing nothing and like, oh, now that the federal government wants to do something, is that going to be better? But also some of it's just like what I hope this doesn't sound like Dunning-Kruger, where it's like I feel like I could have done a better job doing this, and this isn't because I have know a lot about vaccine distributions, but because it's like so fucking idiotic. In Florida, for instance, the person I know has a grandmother who is trying to get vaccinated, doesn't live in one of the like nursing homes or anything where, you know, it's sort of taken care for you. And it's just a process of like, oh, we heard Publix, the grocery store is having them. So I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m., her grandchildren, and we're going to try to like get on the website and it's going to keep crashing. Well, that didn't work. So we heard this other place has it and we have this other. And so now I'm like texting people like, hey, I heard you got it at this hospital. Like, is this hospital? Oh, that hospital's out. And there's like they're asking, you know, send an email to this email address and you might get scheduled, but there's like no confirmation. And also old people don't know how to send emails. So it's like their whole life story. Like, hi, I'm 75, turning 76. I was born and raised in Florida. Also, I'd like a vaccine, please. And it's like, for the love of God, we just want your address and date of birth. And so that's one part of it. And also I was talking to a friend of mine who's a pharmacist who is administering it, talking about how, you know, they're trying to, you know, get more people trained to vaccinate people, including dentists, but even things like on a state level that could be fixed or even possibly coordinated. This is in New York. I guess individual healthcare facilities were like, here's how much vaccine we think we need. So the place this person worked at ordered too much. And then the state had to be like, oh, this hospital needs some and you have too much. So we're going to take 500, you know, vials or doses or whatever from you. And we're going to do it. And so when you're talking about, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of like healthcare sites in a place like New York and just expecting it to all work out by being like, I guess I need 200 doses and I guess they need 500 without some sort of like a fucking spreadsheet. You know, I know we don't have a centralized data healthcare record like places in Norway and the UK have. I know that makes things more difficult, but make a fucking spreadsheet or Google Doc, Google Form, whatever. Or like Broadway is better at distributing their extra Broadway tickets with will call to college students than we are about like extra doses of vaccines.
Yes. Put the theater majors in charge of this, guys.
Yeah, like they should just have a thing where it's like, listen, if you want a vaccine, show up at noon and you might get a call at 5 p.m. saying that you've got an hour to make your way down to get this thing. And, you know, this friend was also talking about, you know, the problem of wasting doses. You open a vial, I think it's 6 hours, she said. And also worried about getting in trouble giving it to the sorts of wrong kinds of people, whereas other people in other states are less worried. And I've heard friends say like, oh, I know someone who knows someone who said if they have extra doses they might call me and I can show up at 5, which I don't even think is a bad thing. Like it would be
No,
bad
give
if
them
it,
out.
yeah, I mean it would be bad if it's like I got extra doses at the end of the day, give me $500, but as long as that's not happening. And it's just a fucking nightmare. And you know, I forget exactly how many weeks it was, but New York City in the 40s or 50s had a smallpox outbreak. This is pre-computer. And they just were like, fuck it. We're vaccinating every single person in the city of New York, 6 million people. And they did it in a matter of weeks, and they averted it. Now, granted, it's a little bit easier because they were able to mass manufacture the dosage. But, you know, if they can figure out how to vaccinate everyone once they have it, like, why can't we distribute a couple million doses? So that's my rant.
Yeah.
I wish that we would put this in the hands of people who are accustomed to large scale events, or like mobilizing like a significant number of people and like moving them around. Like
FEMA.
The airline industry is really good at that. Like they're always like herding people around, or like even the military is good at like herding mass groups. So like, why can't we speak to experts in that field, like somebody in like logistics or like project management, to ask how could we do this? I feel like there has to be transferable skills that we can rely upon for this sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think we should use resources like the National Guard and whoever else to like have massive public vaccination sites all over the country. I do think, you know, Alec, you mentioned this, that, you know, some people have just had to give out doses before it goes bad. And I've seen people get mad at that. I'll just say this. I encourage everyone to remember, this is not an individual health problem. It's a community health problem. And as long as, like, you know, we already talked about no one that you're listening to right now thinks they're getting it anytime soon. But remember that, like, I'm sorry, I'm going to sound corny now. It is better for everyone if those doses get in people's arms, no matter who they are, as soon as possible, because that's going to stop the spread of this thing, because it is a community health problem. So don't be a hater. Don't be mad. Don't get salty if people get it before you. It benefits you. I mean, you, listener, if other people get it. So just let's at least try to have that mindset.
Yeah.
And also tell old people in your life. I know some of you, I might be an old person, but I mean like real old people. Tell them that when they get it, they still need to wear a mask and do all the safe stuff. It's a thing I'm worried about with older people. I've talked to a few people, I won't say names, who are old, who think that when they get it, it's like a passport to play. You know, we still don't know if people can transfer it with the vaccine. So make the old people in your life be smart. Get them pretty mask that they'll wear just because they like the sort of stitching and the glitter on them.
Yeah.
God, I love wearing a mask.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to wear them forever. Now, so let's move on to a related topic. Alec, I guess you're here to tell people in LA how they should live, or use your East Coast bias to lay harsh criticism on Los Angeles, just like a good New York Times writer would. I kid. But tell us about why things are so bad where I live and why I have to be terrified to get groceries.
Yeah, I don't know if you knew this, Michael Burns, but the coronavirus, as it's called, is real bad in LA. I keep hearing worst in the world, but I actually don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's per capita, per death, whatever. It's a fucking nightmare. And I do and don't understand, because on one hand, at the beginning of the pandemic, we were roasting like, oh, all these stupid fucking governors have this outbreak and they're not like shutting down their cities. And then in LA and in New York, we're having a very strong second resurgence. And they're like, oh, well, we're not going to like shut down gyms. That seems extreme. So there's that. But anyway, the article I want to talk about is in Vox. It's called Los Angeles is America's New Coronavirus Hotspot. Urban sprawl might have played a role. Early on in the pandemic, there was, obviously New York, where I live, was the bad place to be. A lot of people died, mass graves. It was not a good time. People, including myself, attributed it not irrationally to like, hey, it's a city. You have hundreds of people, crammed into subway cars every day, millions of riders crammed individually, hundreds at a time, into subway cars, in offices, passing people on the sidewalk. Obviously, it is the concentration of people that has made New York so bad. And that was kind of the assumption. Now, fast forward 6 months or a year later, and there's huge outbreaks in very rural areas. LA, which is still a city, but it's not quite as concentrated in New York, is obviously doing much, much worse. And so the article kind of talks about how that breaks down a little bit. That's not to say, again, New York is not doing so hot right now either, but I think LA is much worse. So the article talks to one Jennifer Jane Rowe, who's the director of the University of Virginia Center for Design and Health, argues that one of the specific problems of LA is the urban sprawl and car culture. People in Los Angeles and other commentators everywhere were like, listen, you get in the car in LA, you go somewhere, you're protected. You don't have to share buses with strangers. Obviously, there's it. But there's like a weird kind of symptom of that, which is because of the car culture in LA. I guess it's one of the most park poor areas. There's just not green spaces to hang out. Rowe talks about how people feel isolated and alienated. The only way to see people is you drive to basically not a shopping mall, but like some strip mall and go a place and have drinks. There's not a place for you to have a picnic outdoors with your friends. There's not a sense of community. And so it's very hard on people's mental health. And I just thought it was a really interesting way to look at the spread of disease in that light, specifically in just like, what does the spread of disease mean when you have no parks? And is that applicable to other things that aren't coronavirus? Like if there was, another influenza outbreak or tuberculosis or anything like that. What do you think?
I mean, I just, as the perspective of a Los Angeles resident, I mean, I think a lot of those points are apt. And it was weird that early on the logic was, we're good because people take cars and not the train and bus. And now it's like, for some of those same reasons, we're screwed. But yeah, the lack of public space in this city is abhorrent. Near where I live, there's one like kind of fancy neighborhood that has wide medians between the roads that's just a bunch of grass, and people have turned that into like a makeshift park, and they have like picnics and hang out there, which is great. Like I like to see people occupying green space, but there's very few places to hang out because of how expensive real estate is here. I have like 2 people I know that have actual good outdoor space in their house. So when things did feel safer, like those were the only people I saw because we could hang out safely in their backyards. But yeah, I mean, it does feel like that. And I know as well, I don't know if this came up in that article, but something I've read about a bit is housing density is also a problem in Los Angeles, where a lot of people live together, have roommates, live with a bunch of family, and in a lot of households, you might have 2 people that have to go to work every day and 3 people that don't. And maybe those people that have to go to work have to take the bus to their retail job or their job or whatever. So it also sounds like that's been a problem, but it has felt weird on the ground here, wondering why things have gotten so bad. Yeah, Serby.
So researchers say that there is a new strain of COVID in LA.
Wait, but this is the special California one, not the UK one, right?
Yeah, this is totally separate from the UK one.
Is this the one that came from Brazil, or there's so many mutant strains now I don't know which is which?
I didn't read anything about Brazil in this article, but they were saying that, I forget the percentage, but it was something like, I don't know, I'm just going to make something up. Like 40% of the people at Cedars-Sinai have this specific strain. And so they're saying that it could be like super contagious or something, and that could contribute to why LA has just exploded in terms of COVID cases.
Yeah.
I mean, and the other thing too with LA that one has to remember is that you can go to a shopping mall here. Like I'm not supposed to see anyone or hang out with a friend or go in any enclosed space, but if I wanted to go to like Lids or Forever 21 or Claire's, or Banana Republic, I could go to one of those places right now in an indoor shopping center if I wanted, because that's considered to be some sort of a priority. Dining is shut down completely, no outdoor dining or whatever, but one can go to the shopping mall. Certain gyms are open at capacity. I think go-kart tracks are still open. So there's also been this sort of disconnect between what we know and what we're doing. And what feels really weird too is like, and this seems to be the case all over the country, is that the same type of, like, basically the numbers are so much worse now than they were when things really were locked down.
Yeah.
So I do worry, and I know people talk about COVID fatigue and all this sort of stuff. It does feel, and maybe this connects a bit with our last topic, like because of COVID fatigue and because of people just kind of being like, oh, well, the vaccine's coming, so whatever. It feels like large swaths of society have given up, which really bums me out, and I wish someone would cart narc them. But am I being too pessimistic? Do we think that that's part of it at all? That people, along with all of this, have the lazy Los Angeles hippies just given up?
I think on a personal level, there is obviously fatigue, but also governmental fatigue. I mean, again, it's the, Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo shut down New York City for 2 weeks at the beginning. Now the numbers seem about on par, although the deaths aren't nearly the same. So maybe it was just underreported back then or something like that. And, I think I think we shut down indoor dining again, but we're not really. It seems like, why aren't we doing the 2-week thing, and especially in LA? And so I feel like maybe governors and mayors are saying people are tired of this and they will riot or something if we try it again. We don't have the money to do it or something like that. But also on a personal level, I do, I was much more cautious in whatever that was, March or April, basically not leaving the house for days at a time. Whereas now I'm just like, listen, I really need to go for a walk. And like, I've been told that, in general, 15 minutes of exposure, like for a case to transmit, it's often 15 minutes of exposure to a person with COVID. So I'm like, if I go and get this coffee for 2 minutes, like it's safe. And I would have never said that. And I'm not saying that's the right answer. I'm not saying I should be doing that, but I'm just like, obviously been a very cautious person for a year. So that's where I'm at.
Have either of y'all felt yourselves getting cautious recently? I only ask that because I've kind of felt like a return swinging back towards that, where I got a little lax for a bit. Serby, have you felt that?
Yeah, I did. So I was super cautious in the beginning. And then I think maybe towards like August or September, I like chilled out a little bit.
Same.
But then when cases started to resurge again in like September, October, I ramped it back up. And so I do feel like people do look at me a little strangely, like when they see me outside, like washing my milk bottle or like doing certain things, like really, like that's a little extreme. But I feel like it makes me feel more comfortable. And if there's like one small chance that I can get COVID from the surface of a bag of chips, I would rather wash it and look like an idiot than have my grandparents die. Like, it's not about me. Like, if I get COVID, I don't care. But, like, I see my grandparents, and I don't want them to die. They're in their 80s. So I just feel like I'd rather be overly cautious than enjoy myself.
Yeah, I'm more cautious in some ways, but in other ways, I'm just very easily able to rationalize what I want to do, and as many people are. And so it's like, oh, I want to be more cautious, so I'm not going to go in the bagel place because there's like often a lot of people in there, and the owner I think is from Staten Island.
Oh boy,
Staten Island's real bad with the COVID numbers, and also,
oh really?
Yeah. So there's that, but I will again like go into the other place with the shittier bagels because it's like, okay, like it's actually very spacious and there's only ever one person in there. And I, again, 6 months ago or 8 months ago, I would not have done that. So I'm rationalizing one, but not the other. And so that's where I'm at, but I'm not at earlier on in the pandemic where like, wash your groceries, obviously you should still wash your hands, but the Serby method, based on what I've read, I was like, I don't think I need to do that. And I'm not doing it again.
I haven't gone back to that. I was a full on like leaving things in the car, not touching bags, wiping things like there was the plague on them. And I've chilled out in that regard. But
I still do that.
Yeah. But I'm back to like, I don't know.
No
I'm like double masking if I have to go in any like confined space. I'm trying to like mostly just buy groceries at like a farmer's market so I can be outside and not have to go inside and be around people. But yeah, it sucks. It sucks real bad. And hopefully anyone else who's listening to this who things suck real bad for it, we feel you, especially if you're in LA, but wherever you are. But if you're in LA especially, Alec told you why you're bad and why he's superior being a New Yorker. Wow. Anything else you want to get into on that one, Alec?
No, that's it.
Awesome. So for our final but most fun topic of the day, and I actually mean this one's actually a little fun. Serby, you're going to talk to us about a wide-ranging topic, but we're going to start with the curious case of Hilaria / Hillary Baldwin.
Yes.
Wife of Alec Baldwin, who has me blocked on Twitter, so I missed a lot of this debate.
Who has you blocked on Twitter?
Alec Baldwin.
Really?
I don't know why. I probably just like called him a chode once in the replies, and he did that. But tell us about this story. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this. Some people might not have. Why was everyone talking about Hilaria Baldwin last week?
Okay, so Hilaria Baldwin, wife of Alec Baldwin, has spent quite a bit of time talking about how she's from Spain. She said that she came to the States when she was 19 to attend university. She's appeared in magazines focused on Latinas. She's done interviews to discuss her experiences as a Spanish American woman. She was once on a talk show doing like a cooking segment, and she picked up a cucumber and was like, "Oh, what is this called?" And they're like, "Oh, it's a cucumber." And she goes, "Ah, right, yes, cucumber." And she's talked about how she was raised and born in Mallorca, and she speaks with a very, very strong Spanish accent. Basically, Hilaria has been presenting herself as Spanish for years. And a few weeks ago, she was in the news after someone tweeted about her decade-long grift to deceive people into believing she's from Spain. Apparently, Hilaria from Mallorca is actually Hillary from Massachusetts. And when this all came out as a lie, she appeared very baffled why people would believe that she's from Spain, even though her wedding to Alec Baldwin was steeped in Spanish culture. Spanish was spoken at the wedding ceremony. She said "sí" at the end. And she gave interviews talking about how she liked that she brought her culture into the wedding. Also, Alec Baldwin has given several interviews saying that his wife is from Spain. And the response to this has been overwhelmingly negative. People are disturbed that she faked not only her accent, but also her life. She presented herself as an immigrant. She talked about how people at the park believe that she's the nanny because her children are blonde with blue eyes, and they believe that because she's Spanish, she has to be the nanny. And it brought up... Go ahead.
Sorry, even the lie is so stupid because, like, she's pretending to be a minority in America by identifying as like a white European lady. I don't know. Like, I get like, oh, like Americans are so dumb and stupid. They see like a white person from Spain and be like, obviously they're Latino.
Yeah, it's
Sorry,
strange
continue.
on multiple aspects. So, her story brought up other conversations about other celebrities who have also faked accents, like Lindsay Lohan and Madonna.
Wait, what did they fake?
What, Alec? Sorry.
I don't know this.
You don't know Madonna's fake English accent?
You know, Madonna from Detroit, the singer.
Oh, I guess she does kind of talk with like a...
No, she stopped now, but when
Yeah.
she was married to Guy Ritchie, she sounded like a fake English person.
It was wild.
It was so weird. And she's given interviews now saying, I don't know why I did that. She's like, I think she said Guy Ritchie made me do it or something.
Yeah. The Lohan one is all time though. I think Lindsay Lohan's various fake accents.
Tell me the Lindsay Lohan one.
So Lindsay Lohan has this like very strange, like, it just sounds like an accent. Like,
I would call it like pan-European.
Yeah. It's nothing, but it's everything. It's like French and English and Spanish.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just everything.
A little Greek accent on certain things.
Yeah.
In my mind, this is like the mom from Schitt's Creek, that like weird
A
accent.
little bit like that,
Yeah.
but like more intense.
Except a real person and not a character actor on a comedic sitcom.
David.
David. Bebe. Yeah, she said that it's happened because she lives a very international lifestyle. And so this conversation started to go towards how celebrities will make themselves appear more international and more unique. And what was fascinating to me is that celebrities live a unique life in comparison to most people. And so they don't need to fake accents or have fake names and a dishonest background to appear interesting. And it just made me think, like, who are they trying to impress, and like, what are they trying to achieve? And I think it's like a self-esteem or a self-confidence issue, that maybe they're so desperate to be better than their peers, or to be more unique, even though they're already unique. So it's strange and fascinating and disturbing. And I'd love to know what the two of you think about people inventing, especially celebrities, not just like people like us, but celebrities inventing a life or faking an accent.
I don't know much about Hillary Baldwin, but I wouldn't necessarily say because they're celebrities, they're unique. If anything, like, let's just say, you know, you're married to an Alec Baldwin type, but, you know, obviously you're no Gwyneth Paltrow or Leonardo DiCaprio. You know, you're not top dollar celebrity. And it's like being famous is weird because it's not necessarily a thing you do. It's just like this amorphous quality of being famous and likability and shit like that. And so, I know nothing about Hillary Baldwin, the
Hillary.
person, Hilaria, whatever. But like if you live in this vapid culture about like attention and you don't really have anything to go off of because you're not like a concert pianist or aren't like an amazing actor or something like that, yeah, you make something up. And I think that in American culture generally, there's this weird thing that's happened where we as a nation are like very obviously interested in talking about like lots of our issues, including racism and identity and stuff like that. But there's like a weird backlash to that where everyone who is like white and middle class needs to feel like they need some traumatic story about how their great 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 grandfather was Native American and died from smallpox, or I may be white and middle class, but one time somebody called me the F word or something like that. And so culturally, I think there's like this weird symptom of lots of things going on in America where people like Hillary Baldwin feel that like to be interesting or valued, they need to basically portray themselves as some oppressed figure. I also think this is true of the transracial lady, Rachel Dolezal, where she like a mediocre writer, but then she started writing about like African diaspora, or she made art or something like that, and then started basically doing blackface. So I don't know. I think we live in a weird world where that's for some people the obvious reaction to a nation that is trying to come to terms with some things.
Yeah, I think that's well put. It's sort of this like desire for otherness and exceptionalization. And I think it is kind of like cooked into us, because I remember being in like 4th or 5th grade when we had to do like family culture day and present on where our ancestors were from. Something too that looks increasingly tone deaf when, I mean, in my school there were a lot of black students and like a few native students. And, it's not like fun when you come from an oppressed culture to be like, where were my family doing like 3 or 4 generations ago? It's not like they were like cobblers in Italy. For some people that goes back to colonization, oppression, slavery, all this sort of stuff. But we're taught to think that that's like this cute part of ourselves. And even the way that people will identify as like blank American, like Italian American, Irish American. To be clear, like when I say I'm Irish American, it's a bit, so it's okay when I do it. But this desire to possess some sort of otherness and not just be a sort of like grab bag American. And I think especially when it comes to people that are celebrities, and I don't mean to like diss, because I don't know a lot about her background, but would we say that Hillary Baldwin is more like celebrity adjacent? Was she like an actor or performer or anything pre-marriage to one of the worst Irish Americans who's ever been?
I don't think so, but since then she's been trying to do like podcasts.
Yeah, and not to shit on this person for her career stuff, but it does seem like a case where, wow, well, I have to find a way to exceptionalize now that I'm married to America's Prince, Alec Baldwin. Just a real bad guy too. In case anyone doesn't remember, there was voicemails where he called his daughter like a fat fucking pig when she was like 12 years old, because he's a good guy.
People forget about that.
Yeah, I never forget about how Alec Baldwin's a total piece of shit.
Same thing with Mel Gibson. Never forget.
Wait, what did he do? What did he do? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. He's the worst. I'm totally kidding. Of course.
He was in a Christmas movie.
But I think it's really an unfortunate cultural thing. And I've even thought about this. Like, if I ever have kids, I don't want to do the thing where it's like, well, this grandparent's from here and this great grandparent's from here. I'm going to be like, sorry, kid, this sucks. You're just like an American. Deal with it. This country is what it is. You're not some like special Fievel Goes West story. You're just a person that's born in this country.
Yeah. There's, I want to say, like a tangential connection in just like, again, like I'm not necessarily criticizing the behavior, but there was like an author who was a admissions officer or professor or something like that, who reads applications to a college or a writing program or something like that. And, in those essays, students basically need to sell themselves as interesting. And a lot of times, like, kids go back to like their oppression and trauma, like, and again, not that this is necessarily bad or they shouldn't be allowed to talk about this stuff, but like I grew up in a rough neighborhood and like dealt with racism my whole life, like that kind of stuff. But this professor, or whoever it was who was like a victim of sexual assault, and was very traumatized by it, is now finding that like the overwhelming majority, or just like an overwhelming amount of application essays focus on like women and their sexual trauma. And the point wasn't to say like, oh, stop this, but like it's weird for me to basically be re-traumatized to have to bring this up, but also for this like social pressure for people to feel that they need to sort of disclose it to get into school. And for some people it might be cathartic, but also it just, I'm basically, I'm not trying to sort of demonize the behavior, but also be like, there's some weird things going on there, you know?
Yeah. We need to bring a psychoanalyst on here to psychoanalyze our culture for all of this weird stuff.
Yeah.
Serby, any more thoughts on this topic and the hilarious debacle of Hilaria Baldwin? I know this is my last time hosting. I've just got fired for that line.
Her accent has disappeared.
Interesting, or que interesante. Yeah. And I think Alec Baldwin went off Twitter too. Not that I know that he like suspended his account. Maybe I'll be allowed to see him again when he comes back.
I will say, once I shared an elevator with Alec Baldwin, and I'm pretty sure he's talking about Majorca, and I never connected the dots. But for some reason, I remembered that he was talking about Majorca because I like had just learned what it was or something like that.
Amazing. This is just an aside, but I find it incredible when celebrities lie about things because it's going to come out. People know who you are. It's not like I can lie and be like, I have a dog and nobody's going to know. Like, people went to school with you. People grew up with you. Yeah. What do you think? No one's going to talk?
Yeah. Oh, the other great example of like wanting to be victimized is the guy from The League who lied about being in one of the towers for 9/11. I forget his name.
Mark Randanzo or something like that.
Yeah.
Just the worst.
What?
But it was more of a like, somehow it got out there. He's like, I just never corrected people, and I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. So Serby, and for anyone else, it's this sort of comic actor used to be on the show called The League, talks about how he was in one of the buildings when 9/11 happened, and he like ran out and was like running through the streets. It turns out he was not there. He was nowhere near there, and it like ruined his career. And one of the things he tried to do to get back in the game at one point was did like the Jeffrey Ross roast battle on Comedy Central. And the comedian he was matched up against just immediately went in for him lying about being in 9/11. And it was just like done, over.
I want to watch that.
Yeah. I know, so, you know, real takeaway here, don't lie about stuff. Be who you are and let your talents, abilities, and kindness and compassion be what define you. Speaking of kindness and compassion, this is a horrible transition. We love to hear from you, kind and compassionate listeners. So as always, we want to hear what you have to think about any of this. If you have any good stories about celebrities who have fake things like this, if you have insights on vaccinations, anything like that, hit us up. You can call us at 213-534-8807. That is 213-534-8807. Or email us, culturebinge@wisecrack.co. Nope, there was no M there, just C-O. culturebinge@wisecrack.co. So let's hear. I think we have one voicemail, maybe a couple emails. So let's get into that.
Yeah, the first one is a voicemail from Ross. If we could play that.
Hey, Culture Binge. This is Ross from DC. Really enjoyed this past episode. Wanted to weigh in a little bit on YA. Now, the genre itself, independent of the opinions of their authors, like sort of like outside of what they're writing about, is really instructive for students. I am a high school English teacher. I taught 10th grade for a while, and then I taught 11th grade. I teach at a Title I school. Many of my students have English as a second language, or they are several grades below reading level. In tracking a person's reading development, often the progression goes from strong plot to being drawn to character, to being drawn to theme, and then being drawn to sort of the technicalities of writing, so how an author is writing. And so what YA does really well, especially for students who are like right around the 8th to 10th grade reading level, is it engages them on the level of character so that they can feel invested to eventually talk about greater themes. Now, one of my enjoyments for reading literature of all kinds is that all of those different levels sort of accumulate as I've grown. And so if I read a book that has a great plot, that has great characters, that explores an incredible theme, and then lastly, like, is written beautifully, holy crap. That's just like a grand slam of a book. But to get there, I have to kind of like ascend the ladder. And so, yes, some YA may be like Emily in Paris, and it's sort of light, and I don't have to think about it when it's over. But for the people who it's reaching, it's activating their reading abilities at a level that gets them primed for the next step up. And so just wanted to sort of like weigh in with my teacher perspective, at least my high school teacher perspective. I love the work that you do. Thank you so much for keeping this going, definitely keeping us going during this pandemic. So we appreciate you all. And Serbia is always still waiting on that mukbang. Take care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like Ross from DC. He's emailed in a couple times. He's the best.
And just shouts to Ross in general for being a teacher. That's, in my humble opinion, the best thing you can do. They're the best people. We should pay them $1 million a year. But that's really interesting. That's cool to hear that perspective on how useful YA can be.
Yeah.
It's like a gateway drug into literacy, literature, all those sorts of things.
I feel like going from theme to technicality is that just a transition I've made just this last year. I don't think that's actually true, but it might be.
Yeah.
Ross, can you email us with book recommendations?
Yeah. It also reminds me, just J.K. Rowling is many things, but like the world of Harry Potter, I think is good. Some might say the themes are good, but on a technical level of writing, it's just fucking awful. It's so bad.
That's how I learned how to write.
I just want to note I said nothing about J.K. Rowling, good or bad, because I just don't want anyone to be mad at me. But Alec did say that she was a terrible writer, implying that if you like Harry Potter, that you have a trash brain.
You know, it's really bad. Like, I went through, like, I just read like 4 books on writing back to back. And when I was like, it seems like all these things you're not supposed to do, she does. And then one author was just like, none of these rules are tried and true. For instance, this thing about like using adverbs and writing dialogue, you could still become a billionaire writer. Her name is J.K. Rowling, by breaking all those rules. So what the fuck do I know? And I think that was the best writing advice I've ever received.
Wow. Also, writing rules are slightly overrated sometimes, but
Sometimes.
Okay. We got, I think that was the only voicemail, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so emails?
Yeah, emails, and one more time, culturebinge@wisecrack.co. Write us in. We read them all, even if we can't read them on the show. But this one's from Evan. Since you covered virtual dating in your last podcast, I was wondering if you'd review my Tinder Bumble profile.
Whoa.
The written part, not the pictures. Evan, I want the pictures. Not to be creepy. As you might not want unsolicited pics. Anyway, the profile is below. Even though it lists Disney movies in there, I wasn't one of the people who gave you grief for that. Thank you, Evan. I enjoyed that episode of the podcast. P.S. again, it's in 4 sections since I couldn't decide what to include. So here we are. We are going to live critique.
Whoa!
Yeah.
This is exciting.
And we're running a little bit out of time, so I'm not sure how many other... I think we should really spend our time on this, even at the expense of other emails. I apologize to everyone else. All right, so here it is, Evan's profile. Share my hoodies, ? Yes. Share my fries, ? Maybe, winky face. I can't fix your daddy issues, but I can, :
Ooh.
1, build
No.
a deck. 2, rock a Ron Swanson mustache. 3, make inappropriate dad jokes. 4, call you sport and pick you up when you're drunk. I'm someone who is never going to give you up, never going to let you down, never going to run around because I have asthma, so I'm bad at running. Line break, 70s music, nerdy stuff, Disney movies, acro yoga, swing dance, rock climbing, and
Very active.
profile. I've got a lot of thoughts on this. I think we all do.
The last part I liked best, I'll say, just the list of activities.
Yeah.
I think we all reacted to this, and once again, I like what's this person's name again? Or do we have it? Evan, first of all, the vulnerability you're showing right here, I want you to know I respect that. Online dating is scary. If my partner ever leaves me, I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life because I don't know if I have it in me to online date. So take everything that we will say with that. You got to lose the daddy issues thing because that comes off as kind of like potentially, a little patronizing. So I would say remove. That would be my first thing. I say we just cut that right off the bat.
Yeah.
Seeing as I'm uniquely qualified for this.
Yes.
I don't see how that would be what.
I say you should get rid of everything before you list your activities. Because the Ron Swanson, the like all that stuff. Like, we don't need any of that. Like, we don't need to know that you're going to call me sport if I fall down or whatever. Like, that. The more interesting thing is what you like to do, though nobody's going to get past the intro. My friend will drink a glass of wine and get on Tinder, and she'll screenshot Tinder profiles to
You're
my
going to
friend.
give the poor guy anxiety. Don't tell her.
No, I'm just saying that the number one thing that we will roast guys about is if they talk about daddy issues. Like, it's
okay.
immediate, like, you're an asshole. No one's going to go on a date with you. Like, I guarantee nobody sees that and is like, yeah, this guy sounds like the one for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And maybe they've had like limited success by like a certain person who's not, but I'm just saying for every one success that maybe that works on, you're disqualified from like 50 women.
Yeah.
I sent this to two, I know two women. One of them is my partner. One of them
I know two women. Sorry.
On the first part, I think there's, well, I have specific thoughts. One is like the Ron Swanson mustache. There's an old rule in writing, speaking of writing rules, which is show, don't tell. You got a picture with a Ron Swanson mustache. You don't need to tell people that you have it. Obviously, you know, some women historically have liked my facial hair. You'll almost never hear me talking about it. So, but fine. People like Ron Swanson mustaches, show, don't tell. I think the building a deck is cool, but I do wonder, and I talked about this with another woman who, you know, is interested in men. I think that might be like a good thing to like, it's almost like you want to bury the lead. You want to like bring that up a day, like, oh, by the way, like I know how to build decks. Cause that is super fucking cool. And also someone I know thought it was charming, the pick you up when you're drunk. You know, it's like a nice, like, I'm not an asshole thing. Serby disagrees. Obviously women are gonna disagree, you know, about what their sort of verboten kind of lines are. Do you disagree with that, Serby, besides just the call you sport and pick you up when you're drunk?
I just don't know that that's what I would include in a dating profile.
Yeah, fair.
Like, I think there's another way to describe that sentiment, that you are like, you'll take care, like you'll look after somebody, but I feel like that doesn't need to be, you don't need to broadcast that in the profile.
Yeah, I have two quick thoughts on this. One would be, I think the kiss method works really well for dating profiles, and that doesn't mean you just smooch them. But the keep it simple, stupid thing, right? I think a simple profile is the best. And, you know, like Serby said, a lot of times people are, sadly, because of our consumerist mindset, are swiping through dating profiles as if they're looking at, like, you know, items on a retail website. So you got to be kind of quick and punchy. The other thing I'll say, though, is it is a numbers game, and something that might come off as like corny or stupid or whatever to some people might like a lot. And you're not out here trying to, and I don't know what your vision is, but you're not trying to appeal to everyone. You're trying to appeal to people that will like you and that you'll like them and you'll have similar interests. So, you know, sometimes you do have to like take a swing knowing that someone might think it's ridiculous, but someone might like it. That said, I agree with everything my esteemed colleagues are saying here. But, you know, I wouldn't want this person to hear our advice and think that it has to be this completely streamlined vanilla thing. Do you, be you. But just, you know, think about how this stuff looks when it's hitting someone's screen.
Yeah, and I think that's why the interests are good, because no matter who you are and what your interests are, and you have cool interests, swing dance sounds rad, rock climbing, if acro yoga is like the thing with the floating around from the tapestries, I'm using all the wrong words, but that's
the
cool
ribbon
too.
thing.
Oh, no pictures of holding fish. I think dudes shouldn't hold fish pictures on dating profiles. There's a whole account that's like dudes holding fish on Tinder.
Or like sitting next to drugged tigers. That's another thing.
No drugged tigers.
Take
no
it down.
fish.
Yeah, or Joe Exotic. If you have a picture with Joe Exotic, do not post it.
But I think the interests are good, because also, you know, like a lot of times what people want in a partner is someone with similar, or at least compatible interest. And so like, again, if my partner left me, I'd probably be forever alone like Michael, but I might be looking for someone with like the words like hiking in the profile, because I like hiking and reading, and maybe like what kind of books, and maybe I'll get super judgy about that. So I think that's a good place to be. But also I think you should put your profile name as Ignacio and claim you're from Mallorca. People will find you way more interesting.
No,
and
make
that's
your
it.
profile
That's my
name
advice.
not a serial killer, and then have your bio be, I'm a lot of things, but a serial killer isn't one of them. Tell me what size shoes you have. I love feet, but I'm not a serial killer. Let's go out at night in a Home Depot parking lot.
Yeah. I think that so here's the thing. If I had just read Evan's interest, I would have swiped right and been like, I want to learn more about swing dancing. Like that, he sounds like a great guy. I would have swiped right on that. But the beginning part is why I wouldn't have.
Yeah. So would you say condense so we're getting to the interest as quick as possible with a light intro?
I would say do a light intro that's like something very genuine. Like what people will respond to is human connection. And so if you're just like a normal person who's like, hi, I'm Evan, like really hope we're a good fit for each other. Here's what I like to do. Something that's just like very simple, even simple like that. And then you list your interests. I'd be more interested in that and then see your humor and personality when we're chatting and when we meet up.
Yeah. And if you want to match with Serby, set your zip code to, but yeah. Best of luck, Evan.
Yeah, thank you for the vulnerability of trusting us with that. That's really cool, and hopefully you don't take any of this harshly. And if anyone else wants to do it, now that we're really good at this, send us these things.
I am an expert. Yeah. Our last email of the day is from Luke about Disney Plus content. Sent us a really interesting email. I'm so glad you guys discussed the new Disney Plus content to be released over the next few years, as you had a similar conversation that I had with my wife. I worry that Disney is going towards quantity over quality in order to get the prestige of established streaming platforms. Unfortunately, the streaming business is dominated by what The Economist called Netflixonomics. This model is based on having frequent new content and understanding of viewers' tendencies to push content to them that they would likely enjoy. Netflix knows that their subscribers can't watch everything, so they try to tailor the original content to everyone's flavor of the week, ironically by sampling taste clusters of 2,000 viewers in hopes that they won't pay attention to competitors. This model and streaming in general have completely turned the law of diminishing returns, as Alex mentioned, it's Alec, but I still love you, on itself, since movie producers can use their algorithms to target this mass quantity of movies towards people who are more likely to watch it and enjoy it. A failing movie or show is no longer a huge deal since it costs less due to niche audiences. Disney seems to be going full speed ahead mimicking this model, which leads me to believe that only a few of the Star Wars and Marvel properties will be really good and the rest will be good to specific groups. If Netflix is the model, then likely means this is the future of television. Yeah, I think it's a really cool email. I think I will say WandaVision, a Marvel property. It's on my, maybe this is quantity over quality, but we'll see if I'm wrong. Don't send me hate mail, please.
Yeah. That's a really insightful email.
Just agreement all around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, so
very weird, awkward pause there.
Sorry for that awkward pause. Edit that. No, that was just a great email. We agree with you. Thank you for that insight. And yes, I think that is the worry with Disney Plus. And as of right now, unless you're really into Star Wars or Marvel or you're a child, probably not the best streaming service. But if you don't want to email, but you just want to quickly give us takes by hitting us up on social media to tell us why we're wrong, how can people do that? Serby, where can people find you? Don't give them your zip code though.
Suri Patel 22 on Twitter.
Alec.
I'm at Wisecrack Alec.
Nice. I'm Michael O'Burns, and now my account is reinstated after it got locked because someone reported a tweet from 6 years ago.
Cool.
Yeah, man. Don't joke about. Never mind. I won't even say it. But so hit us up. We would love to hear from you there. And of course, once again, culturebinge@wisecrack.co 213-534-8807. We'll be back with you in 2 weeks. So hopefully some exciting and positive things happen between now and then. And we'll see you there. Later, guys.
Bye.